Knew this was going to happen, Rube. We get through our podcast on Tuesday afternoon. We spent a lot of time talking about Matt Hennessy and Devontae Parker and Zach Bond and lawnmowers.
Mainly lawnmowers.
And then a couple hours later, now maybe not even a couple hours later, we find out CJ Gardner Johnson is coming back to Philly.
Yeah, and I can tell you exactly what the scenario was. So we're doing the podcast, and Howie's on the phone with CJ's agent, and he's watching, YouTube or Art 19, uh, NBC Sports Philadelphia channel, waiting to see when the pod goes up. And as soon as it goes up, he's like, "Okay, we can do it now." He's doing that. So I think what we should do, we'll just do a podcast every 2 hours.
That seems like a lot. This is where I should mention this is the Eagle Eye podcast presented by Nissan. Ruben Frank, Dave Zangaro. Emergency podcast. We didn't want to wait until Wednesday to talk about CJ Gardner Johnson. This is a big deal for the Eagles. It helps them out on defense. It brings back a familiar face, brings back some playmaking to that secondary. Yeah. What do you make of it? Give me your first initial reaction.
Perfect addition in so many ways. Obviously, safety was their most glaring need. I think I said safety. You said linebacker the other way around. I think you said safety the other day, yesterday, today. They didn't have it. They didn't have any safeties. They cut Kevin Byard. He signed with the Bears. It was basically, obviously Sidney Brown isn't going to be back probably till maybe a month into the season, and who knows if he can even, we don't know exactly what he is yet. So it showed some promise, but it was basically Reed Blankenship. And then you start looking at the practice squad and futures contracts, Tristan McCullum and guys like that. Cupboard was bare, and it's not like Reed Blankenship had a good second half either. So there were moves to be made. Howie really had to do something here. And, we talked about Justin Simmons and CJ, and look, Justin Simmons is a really, really, really good player, but CJ's 4 years younger. And the playmaking, the physicality, the swagger that you mentioned, he brings so much to this team. You love his physicality. He just plays the game, never takes plays off, plays the game the right way. He can blitz, he can stuff the run. He just gives this defense such a jolt of energy and life and arrogance and personality. These are all things that were missing so much last year, and he's going to bring a lot of that back.
Yeah, and you mentioned it in there a little bit. He's a versatile player, and I think that's important to remember too. Before he came to the Eagles, he was a nickel cornerback. The Eagles made him a safety, and there were some bumps and bruises. It wasn't a perfect, seamless transition. He's still an ascending player at the safety spot, but he does offer you that versatility. And the Eagles right now need safeties and a nickel corner. So you add this piece, and we'll see where he plays. Now, the numbers for this contract, it's being reported as a 3-year contract with a max value of $33 million. We'll see what that is in actuality. If it is truly $33 million, that would be a lot of money to pay to a nickel cornerback. But you look at CJ, I really do think he can play both of those spots within the same game, depending on the situation.
Yeah. And, we'll see how, we know that, in the past, the Eagles have done that. They've moved guys around depending on the formation, the situation, and all that. Certainly, Sean Desai did that. I'm not really sure what Matt Patricia was doing. I'm not sure Matt knew what he was doing.
He's available.
He is. He's one of the top candidates out there. I read that somewhere. But yeah, I think as long as he can handle it, and it's a lot. It's a lot to move around. They're different positions, although there's some crossover. But he can handle both of them. And look, they still have to add more pieces in that secondary. That secondary last year gave up 35 touchdowns and had 9 interceptions. CJ had 6 interceptions by himself in 12 games 2 years ago. Eagles allowed the second most passing yards. So the secondary was a mess last year. You cut Kevin Byard, you cut Avonte Maddox, you add CJ Johnson, and you're on your way to reshaping it. There's more work to be done, but man, what a move. Um, I would say, I mean, he can make as much of an impact on defense. I don't want to say as Saquon, because Saquon's going to have the ball in his hands 20 times a game, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Saquon's going to make much of an impact on defense.
did I say on defense, or I meant to the team? But,
I know what you meant. Yeah.
yeah.
Although Saquon probably could play the will linebacker spot.
Penn State linebackers, right?
Yeah.
He looks like a linebacker. You never know. But everything this team needs is wrapped up in that package. Now, the thing for CJ is staying healthy. He only played 2 games last year. He had a really bad knee injury in training camp. They thought it might be season. I remember hearing about it at camp, but he ended up being okay. And then he had a torn pec in week 2 against the Seahawks and missed almost the entire year. Came back for the last regular season game and then played great in the postseason. So he only played 2 regulars. He played more playoff games for the Lions than regular season games, or I guess it was 3-3. But two straight years in the NFC Championship game. Not all because of him, but it just tells you what kind of player he is.
Yeah, you're right, though. The injuries, if there's one major concern, I think that will be it. He played 12 games in 21, 12 games in 22, just 3 regular season games in 23. My guess is once we hear from the Eagles about Gardner Johnson, they're going to tell you, like, yeah, he's missed time, but they can kind of explain away the injuries. It's not like they've been lingering soft tissue things. I mean, his injury with the Eagles was certainly kind of a fluky deal, the lacerated kidney. So I think that's how they would explain it away. Now, he does play the game with a little reckless abandon, similar in a way to Avonte Maddox, where he'll throw his body around a little bit.
Yeah.
And that concerns you. He's not the biggest guy, but it's not like these injuries have been, it's not like a chronic knee injury or something like that.
Right. And just such a playmaker. I mean, the stat that I love is 12 career interceptions in 58 games. I mean, that's an interception every 4.5 games. And he wasn't, I don't think he was even a starter till the full-time starter till the second year. So he makes plays. He's around the ball. He's just one of those guys that the ball seems to find him.
Yeah. And we watched him in 22. It wasn't like all 6 of those interceptions were exceptional plays by him. Some of them kind of just found him, but sometimes there is something to be said for that too. A guy happens to be in the right place, and it's not by accident all the time. Sometimes it is. And I think there's, it balances out a little bit over time. But the other thing to remember too, like I mentioned, he's pretty new at playing safety. He could be theoretically still ascending into the player the Eagles think he might be at that position.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance of that. He's younger than I had remembered. And yeah, first, by the way, I don't know what that even means.
He's older than you should have remembered.
I was guessing he was 27 or almost 28. But first Eagle safety.
He's 26, by the way.
He's 26. I think I said that, but earlier. But first Eagle safety in 2022 with 6 interceptions since Greg Jackson in 1994. I just thought I'd throw that out there. People want to know.
They do. They were asking.
The first Eagle at any position was 6 since Brandon Boykin in 2013.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about this. I find it fascinating that the 2 sides were able to come together on a deal like this, because it was just last year where the Eagles offered him a multi-year deal. He turned it down. There were definitely some bad feelings. His agency even tweeted about it because they started to get roasted for the deal he took in Detroit. CJ was tweeting things and deleting things. It was kind of a little bit messy. I kind of give credit to Howie and CJ and his representatives for kind of pushing all that to the side, realizing the player and the situation and the team were right for each other, and still finding a way to make it work, because that's not easy. This is a business where sometimes everyone says it's all business, but no, like, personal feelings sometimes get in the way.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'm going to guess that pre-2015 Howie Roseman doesn't get this deal done. I think the lessons he learned in his year in exile, or on the other side of the building, as Jason Kelsey phrased it the other day, I think he really learned how to deal so much better with people, and maybe not us, but people who matter, agents, just league people around the league. And I don't know this for a fact, but I'm guessing that pre 2015 Howie, it's like, I'm not dealing with him. I don't want him back. No, but I think both sides showed a lot of professionalism. Hey, what's the best situation for CJ? What's the best situation for the Eagles? Yeah, there's some name calling and some hard feelings, but let's just get beyond that and do what's best for both sides. And they did that. That speaks a lot of both sides of the
I
deal.
think it does. Now, I have a question for you about both sides of this agreement, and I'm going to ask you that on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table. Rube, the question about the Eagles. Is this an admission that they screwed up last year?
Clearly, I would think, yeah. I mean, I don't think it's not like they were ever going to keep Kevin Byard under that big number, but I mean, if he had played well, I mean, it starts with Terrell Edmunds, really. Because Terrell Edmunds turned into Kevin Byard, and they just didn't have the talent at the position. And really, that goes for the whole secondary. Now, should they have known that James Bradbury was going to play the way he did? It's hard to say, but I think it's clear that I think with everything Howie's been doing is an admission that we just didn't build the team the right way in 2023.
Yeah, because if you remember, the Eagles offered that deal to Gardner Johnson, and Howie Roseman's on record saying this, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, but basically, once we realized that wasn't going to happen, we had the money that we had allocated for CJ Gardner Johnson. They thought James Bradbury was going to leave in free agency. That money that would have gone to CJ then went to James Bradbury, and they ended up keeping him and Slay. Obviously, in hindsight, they would have been better off with CJ Gardner Johnson as opposed to James Bradbury. And this is an obvious admission of that. But even in the moment, I think we talked a little bit about, like, which guy would you rather have? Yeah. The cornerback's the more important position, but
yeah,
the player actually matters too.
And, you know, when we talk about, like, when we're talking about Justin Simmons versus CJ, or, you know, when you just talk about the difference in age, I mean, James Bradbury, they play a different position, but James Bradbury was 29 and CJ was 25 during those conversations. And I think Howie understands that, all things being equal. And look, James Bradbury is coming off a second-team All-Pro season. You go with the younger player. And this is why. You know, CJ might not have a great year, but it's not going to be because he's too old. You know, you're not going to see what happened with Bradbury. So there's definitely a lesson there.
Okay, my question about CJ Gardner Johnson instead of the Eagles. His personality, we talked about it in the positive sense already. The juice he brings to practice, the braggadocious nature with which he plays. Is there a negative side to this? And is that a legitimate concern when you lock up a guy to a 3-year deal? Honestly,
I don't think so. You know, you can ask the same questions about AJ Brown, who's a guy who's got, you know, a great personality. He wears his heart on his sleeve. I think CJ's like him in a lot of ways. They're both great players, and they speak their mind, and sometimes they say the wrong thing. But I think I think you certainly like the personality, you like the swagger. And when you have that, you're going to get the flip side of it a little bit. As long as it doesn't become, you know, sit-ups in the driveway in Moorestown, as long as it doesn't get to that point, I think you're okay with it. I don't think CJ or AJ, any of those initial guys, I don't think they ever did anything to really, hurt the team or hurt the locker room. They're just emotional, honest, open, heart on their sleeve guys, and kind of like that.
Yeah. I, for the most part, agree with you, but it will be something I'll be monitoring
Yeah,
during this contract, especially because two of the Eagles' biggest leaders just retired and they've built this really strong culture in that locker room. And for the last, 5, 6, 7 years, they basically felt like they could handle any personality in that locker room because of who they already had in it. Curious to see if that dynamic shifts a little bit after losing two veterans like Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox.
it's a fair question. I never looked at CJ as a problem. I never saw that. It really wasn't until the contract talks fell apart that there was any back and forth with him, and it's really the agency more than anything that seemed to mishandle it a little bit. I have an important question for you.
Mm-hmm.
There's footage of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and you at Super Bowl Media Day where he's interviewing you. It's never been seen because that was his last game as an Eagle, was the Super Bowl in Glendale. Will that footage now be rescued from the cutting room floor?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because I think we really buried the lead here. And aside from me potentially being in it, uh, the the vlog that he put out was actually really fascinating. He had a video camera with him in the trainer room, talking to teammates, all behind the scenes stuff. He released one episode. They lose the Super Bowl. He ends up out of town, and then we never see the other footage. I want to see it. Like it was actually really fascinating to me. So once we're settled in here and he's settled in, I'll bring that up with him. I think the people want to see it too.
Absolutely. That's right up there with Landon Dickerson's $44,000 lawnmower.
You brought it back. People were like, I thought we escaped the lawnmower talk.
I think people like the lawnmower conversation.
Yeah.
The one guy.
Look, for us, selfishly, as reporters, CJ is a fun guy to have around.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Fun on the field, fun in the locker room, fun on the sideline. Never kind of know what you're going to get.
That's for sure. Playmaker. That's the one word. If one word to describe him, he's just, the ball finds him, like you said, and they need that. They had 9 receptions all last year in 17 games. It's not very many.
It is not very many. We'll see what happens here. I mean, the Eagles clearly not done. This is a busy offseason. We knew it would be a busy free agency period, busy offseason. I think this is just the latest deal. I think there's more coming, and when it does, we'll be ready to break it down.
One thing people are asking about the Eagles cap space, and we said on the last podcast, we don't have the breakdowns of these contracts yet. We don't know the real numbers. We don't know the signing bonuses. We don't have the year-by-year base salaries. You need all that stuff to be able to figure out the cap hits each year. Once we have that, which I would think we'd have in the next 48 hours, we'll get a sense, although by then they'll sign other guys. But we'll start to get a sense of what kind of cap space they have, but they're okay. They can make more deals.
Yeah, no, they definitely have more space. Everything's a little fluid at this time of the year because Howie does massage it in a way where he can pull out all the stops and all the tricks, whether it's void years or big signing bonuses, big option bonuses in the middle of a contract. Right. There are ways that he and Jake Rosenberg and that entire team make these deals to work for them. And they came in with a lot of cap space. So they're in good shape.
Yep.
All right. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast and you appreciate me leaving my mom's birthday dinner to come here and do this pod, please
rate. You didn't leave early, did you?
I left after dinner. I still have to go back for cake. Please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click that like button and subscribe there as well. And I'm not joking about that. I feel bad enough that my mom had to make her own birthday cake. It was my plan to do it, and I ran out of time today. And she made it, and then we eat dinner, and then I'm like, sorry, gotta go. So I am going to get back there now, sing happy birthday, eat some birthday cake, and celebrate.
You didn't make the cake you promised to make your mom. You left dinner to go do a podcast. You abandon your family on your mom's special day. Talk about lawnmowers. I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
A little disappointed in you.
Yeah, I got to go make it up to her, and I will try my best to do that. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.